I heard the engine rev before I even saw the tow truck. It was 6:41, I remember that exactly, because I just poured my first cup of coffee when the sound hit me like a punch to the gut. By the time I made it outside, my 2015 Dodge Ram was already hooked, front wheels off the ground. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I shouted, stumbling barefoot down the front porch steps. The driver didn't answer, just looked past me, clearly uncomfortable. That's when she stepped out of her white Lexus, clipboard in hand like she was casting for a reality show. "Good morning, Mr. Rourke," she said in that condescending, syrup-sweet voice. "You were notified. Article 14A, Section 5. No overnight vehicle storage exceeding 24 feet. I was too stunned to speak. "Cynthia Hale, HOA president," she added, like I hadn't met her 20 times before. "I'm sure you understand. We gave you notice last month." "No, you didn't," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You handed me a suggested revisions packet, not a violation." "Semantics," she snapped, suddenly colder. "You were given the opportunity to comply. You chose not to. My truck's not stored, it's parked, in my own damn driveway." "Your driveway," she said with a smug little laugh, "is subject to community aesthetic standards, which you agreed to when you bought in. Now, if you'd like to avoid further penalties. You think I'm gonna pay you to tow my own truck?" The tow truck groaned, lurching forward. "I swear to God, if you don't stop that thing right now, I'd be careful threatening a licensed contractor." "Mr. Rourke," she said, eyes gleaming, "you're already in violation. Don't add harassment to the list." I don't remember grabbing my phone, but I know I dialed 911. Not because I thought they'd stop it, but because I needed it on record. By the time the dispatcher picked up, the Ram was gone, taillights disappearing around the bend. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely speak. "You'll get an invoice by mail," Cynthia called as she clicked back to her Lexus. "Failure to pay will result in further action." The click of her heels on the concrete echoed like a gavel. What she didn't know, what no one in this pristine, rule-choked subdivision knew, was that Rourke Hauling and Recovery was my company. And that wasn't just my truck. It was my rig. And now, it was my driver's last day on the job. What do you think about the HOA's actions in this story? Have you or someone you know faced something similar? Share your thoughts below. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss the next part. By the time I got the official violation notice in the mail, 3 days had passed. It was a glossy, tri-fold packet with embossed lettering and a smiling image of our community's fake lake on the cover. Inside was a warned $200 fine for unsanctioned vehicle storage, plus a $250 removal administration fee. There was also a final warning. Continued violations may result in suspension of community privileges, liens, or further legal remedies. Legal remedies, they love that phrase. I sat in my office, converted from the garage they'd once tried to shut down for unauthorized business use, and flipped through the HOA's covenants, conditions, and restrictions, all 87 pages of them. I knew them well enough, but now I combed each word like I was preparing for a court deposition. The section Cynthia had quoted, Section 5. It didn't exist, not under 14A or any article. I checked it 5 times. Closest match was 14C, which restricted abandoned or inoperable vehicles parked curbside for more than 72 hours. My truck fully registered, fully operational, and again in my driveway. They were bluffing. Worse, they were making things up. I called the HOA office. A teenage-sounding assistant named Trevor picked up. When I asked for the violation record, he stammered, then said Cynthia would have to authorize any document release. I asked if they kept body cam footage from their contractor inspections. Yes. I said it with air quotes, and he suddenly had another call to take. That night, a yellow slip was taped to my front door. Violation. Escalation. Notice Tier 2, failure to comply. My mailbox was flagged as non-standard. My lawn exceeded height threshold. My house numbers did not meet visibility regulations. I took photos of everything, every blade of grass, every inch of the curb. My yard was cleaner than a golf course. They were coming for me now. On paper, with protocol. Every citation came with a separate fee. The total fines now sat at $2,800. I called Jim Whitaker, my old neighbor 2 streets down, Vietnam vet, spent his retirement documenting every HOA meeting he could sneak a camera into. He chuckled when I told him what was happening. Cynthia's testing you. You push back. She escalates. Classic Hale. You've seen this before. She shut down the Hendersons' backyard greenhouse because she didn't like the way the tarp looked. Said it violated color palette norms. You still have the minutes from the last few board meetings. Sure do, he said. And a map from '98 that doesn't match the one she's pushing now. I caught my attention. She's redrawing property lines. Jim paused. Let's just say what she's presenting isn't what's on file with the county. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just about my truck. This was about control. And Cynthia Hale had no idea who she'd just declared war on. The original plat map from 1998 told a different story. Jim met me behind the clubhouse, where he kept a stack of old HOA binders in his RV and RV. By the way, he only parked in the neighborhood on weekends, thanks to Cynthia's relentless threats about non-permanent dwellings. He handed me a laminated copy, complete with highlighter markings from his own legal fight 3 years ago. This, he said, jabbing a calloused finger at the map, is your eastern property line. See where the oak tree is marked? I nodded. That tree had been on my land for as long as I'd lived there. She's claiming that land is common area now, he added. Says it was redesignated during a beautification restructure, which was never voted on, I guessed. Never even submitted to the county. She doctored a copy for presentation and convinced the board it was legit. I scanned the map, then compared it to the new version she'd posted online last month, slick. Full color, HOA branding across the top. And yes, my driveway had been shortened by 3 feet on paper. My oak tree was gone. Replaced by proposed butterfly path. I felt a tight knot form in my stomach. She was trying to erase me. That night, I uploaded a comparison video side-by-side images of the 2 maps, voiceover explaining the discrepancies. I kept it calm, factual, just the truth. Then I sent it to every homeowner in the neighborhood Facebook group. Within an hour, it had over 100 views. By morning, the group was on fire. Wait, she changed the map. That's not legal, right? Who approved this? My lot shrank too. What the hell? Cynthia responded the next day not with a rebuttal, but with retaliation. 2 security volunteers, both in matching HOA polo shirts, arrived at my door with a cease and desist letter signed only by her. They also brought a printed screenshot of my Facebook post. Disseminating false information about the HOA board violates community standards. One of them read aloud. He couldn't have been older than 19. Tell Cynthia she can shove this letter into her butterfly path, I said, slamming the door. That afternoon, my water was shut off. No warning, no work notice, just gone. I called the utility, no record of any maintenance. Called the city, same story. I walked the easement line behind my house and found the valve box. Fresh scratch marks on the cover. Someone had tampered with it manually. And I had a pretty good idea who. They weren't just finding me anymore. They were trying to push me out. But I still had 1 card left to play. And Cynthia Hale hadn't realized she towed the wrong man's truck. The idea came to me while staring at the dusty clipboard that Cynthia's hired muscle had waved in my face. The whole thing started with a tow my own truck, taken from my own driveway, by a company she thought she controlled. She didn't. Rourke Hauling and Recovery wasn't just my business. It was the only licensed towing company with a municipal contract for our entire county. Every authorized tow, impound, garage, or private repossession came through my dispatch center, which meant I had the authority and the records. I pulled the work log from that morning, the day she had my truck taken. Driver ID Kyle. Dispatch time 5:52 a.m. Job type urgent, HOA request. Immediate removal. Kyle was new, green as grass. He thought he was doing a rush favor for a high-paying private client. He never knew the plate was mine. And Cynthia. She submitted the job under a fabricated invoice form with my own letterhead. Forged. I had everything I needed. At 8:00 a.m. sharp the next day, I walked into the HOA office with a manila folder tucked under my arm and a GoPro clipped to my shirt. Cynthia was behind her desk, talking to Trevor. Both went silent when I stepped in. "We're not taking walk-ins today," she said without looking up. "Good," I replied. "I'm not walking in, I'm serving notice." Her head snapped up. "Excuse me." I dropped the folder on her desk. Inside was the original tow authorization she'd faked, side by side with my company's official forms, the timestamps, the driver log, the dash cam still from Kyle's truck, with my plate clearly visible. "I'm filing a criminal complaint for falsified business documents." I said, "Forgery, impersonation, and illegal vehicle seizure." She laughed, but her voice cracked. "You can't be serious." "Oh, I'm very serious. And while we're at it, here's a copy of the county property map from 1998, notarized and recorded, alongside your doctored version." "You have no right. I own the company that towed that truck," I said, leaning in. "You committed fraud using my business identity." Trevor was pale. He stood frozen, mouth slightly open. "I'm also forwarding this footage to every homeowner, city council member, and local news station within a 50-mile radius," I added. "So if you'd like to discuss real legal remedies, we can start right here." She stood abruptly. "This is harassment. I'll call security." I smiled. "Call whoever you want. Just make sure they understand property law. And tell them to bring a map, the real one." By noon, the story had spread. My video got reposted to the neighborhood page, then local Reddit, then a HOA horror stories group on Facebook. Comments flooded in. Neighbors who'd stayed quiet were suddenly knocking on my door, some with old deeds, others with stories. And then, one of them handed me something that made my blood run cold. A scanned email from Cynthia about me. The email was dated 2 weeks before the tow. Cynthia had forwarded it to 2 board members with the subject line "Neutralizing Rourke Action Plan." Her words were bold, almost gleeful. "He's too vocal. His business gives him leverage we can't control. If we can box him in with escalating violations, we can push him out before the next board vote. Start with vehicle compliance, then lawn, mailbox, etc. The goal is to exhaust him. If he retaliates, we'll call it harassment. Stay united." There it was, black and white. A paper trail of coordinated harassment. I printed 20 copies. By dusk, every mailbox in the cul-de-sac had one. That night, the neighborhood felt different. Porch lights flicked on earlier. People came outside. They waved. A few even apologized. Cynthia must have felt the shift too, because the next morning, she called an emergency board meeting closed door. No public attendance. Didn't matter. Jim live-streamed it anyway, from inside a mop closet. He still had the passcode from his tenure 6 years ago. The feed was glitchy, but clear enough to hear Cynthia try to spin the email as taken out of context. One board member, to his credit, pushed back. "So you didn't write this?" he asked. "I did," she said stiffly. "But it was never intended for enforcement. Just discussion." The next day, she posted a formal letter of resignation, blamed hostile behavior from residents, cited emotional distress, and reminded everyone she had served voluntarily and with love. Right. The fines against me were voided within 48 hours. My water turned back on. And just like that, the HOA was quiet. Not perfect, but quieter. By the following week, I was sitting under the old oak tree, watching a group of neighbors spread mulch around the base. One of them, a retired librarian named Sharon, offered to start a real oversight committee, something democratic, transparent. I agreed to help. We even voted to keep the butterfly path idea, but on public land this time. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. And my truck, still there, parked proudly in the same spot it always had been. I had it wrapped in matte black with a new decal on the side. "Rourke Recovery, we tow lies too." It got more laughs than I expected. This fight taught me something, not just about maps or bylaws, or how far people will go when they're drunk on control. It taught me about the power of standing up, of pushing back when it's easier to stay quiet. So yeah, maybe I was the guy who got his truck towed by his own company, but I was also the guy who parked it right back where it belonged. And this time, I wasn't alone.